This gate on your right. So it's been a while we didn't get this, so just happened that while you are here, but there's nothing to worry about because we didn't the parts that can be danger, which is Ramallah and Nablus. Remember yesterday we were in Nablus and Ramallah also. There were some riots yesterday. So if this happened and you were here, I will cancel Ramallah. I would have canceled Nablus, because that's when it's hard to predict what is really going on. But so instead of doing the Dome of the Rock, Aqsa Mosque, or St. Paul of the Pools of Bethesda, I'm gonna go back, and there are lots of things to see right here. So we're gonna buy tickets and go, and that will be going to show you the different levels by going to the Byzantine, and then go to the southern steps and talk about the Roman street. I'm gonna make you walk on a Roman pavement that goes back to Jesus' time. All right? So that's the change plans. The moment we entered, we are in what's called the Jewish quarter now. Remember, there's 4 quarters.
So normally this is the access to the Temple Mount, which is right up there, and you get access up this rampart and into that green door, so that you're able to see that which we saw from afar. That's how close we are. That's Mount Moriah. There.
Recite to them, to your children, recite them to your children, and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand, fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
Have you heard of the phylacteries? Phylacteries, it's the box that the Jews pray when they pray. That's where it comes. It says, bind them as a sign on your hand. So first one you put on your left arm. With Ashkenazim, Sephardic, there's even a special way that you have to tie those strings, Some goes clockwise, some... Wow. So it's so important. And so for the box, it's a special prayers that you don't just go and buy in a shop, It's something very, very symbolic. And that's when a boy reaches age 14 usually. That's what you call bar mitzvahs. Lots of bar mitzvahs takes place right here at the Western Wall. And so if you come here Mondays and Thursdays, that's when you see lots of bar mitzvahs right at the Western Wall. So that is the Western Wall, or what's referring to the Wailing Wall. So this is not the beginning of the Western Wall. When we leave here and take you to the excavations, I'm going to make you walk on the Roman pavement to where the Holy of Holies is right at this point. So that's why it's so holy. It's just a wall. It's like some of you, I saw your faces looking at those people kissing the column at the Holy Sepulchre, right? It's similar. This is just a wall. It has nothing to do with the temple. If the temple exists, it would be not far from the Dome of the Rock, somewhere inside that area. So this is just a retaining wall that was put way after the second temple was built.
And when you say it was closest to the Holy of Holies, that was the Holy of Holies was the Ark of the Covenant.
That's the Ark of the Covenant.
10 Commandments.
Absolutely. Yes.
Which
so
no one knows where that is anymore.
Nobody. Because remember, the last we heard about is after the expulsion of the Jews by Nebuchadnezzar. Remember in 586? They went to Babylon. So even some, they might be in Ethiopia. That's why you have Ethiopian Jews. The falashas, some went to Ethiopia. And so some tell you it's still buried under. We find it. Now, you cannot mix men and women. Notice the men's section on the left-hand side and women's section on the right side. Now, there's two menorahs for the Jews. Remember, they spoke about it, the 7 branches and the 8 branches. And one of the miracles, it says that they found that there was some oil in the temple that would last for 1 day, but miraculously it had lasted for 8 days. And that's why they have the 8-sided menorah, or the 8 branches. And they usually start from the right side, that they start to lit one for 8 days. So that's the Hanukkah. Women's section on the right side, the ramp. Now, notice when we walked by, there was some ruins. Before, about 4 years ago, we used to walk up where the ruins used to be. That's where the ramp was. And that's how to go up to go to the Temple Mount or Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. 4 years ago, we had some snow. And part of that ramp fell where the women prayed. Thank God it happened like 3 in the morning, no one got hurt. And came out and ignited what's called the Second Intifada. I know for some of you come see, so what did he do by just walking in and coming out? He knew exactly what he was doing. Because he never agreed with what's called Oslo. Remember, he wanted to destroy Oslo Agreement. And so before you go up there, you have to make coordination with the Waqf, that's the Islamic people that are in charge. And so when he walked in, he ignited the second uprising, came back, and ever since, nobody's allowed to go inside the Sudan. So from 2000 to 2004, we couldn't even go up there. Then 2004, things got quiet, and they started to allow us to go up, and if we went up, we couldn't go inside. Remember, we would have been just outside.
Mazel tov, simen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simen tov, Sing, guys.
Mount of Olives.
Right? So,
This is in Mount Moriah.
Tyropian. The Jebusites were the first ones that settled, and even Canaanites before that, they choose to live right down here. Why? Because down from us is this spring that supplied water, and that's called the Gihon spring. So the way to think about it, you put a wall where you're standing, you put another wall where the Kidron Valley, and you knock this wall out. You see, this is a Turkish wall that you see. So you remove that wall, and you go all the way down to where the Gehenna or the Hinnom Valley, and that's where the Gihon spring is. But this was the city of David. David reigned about 1000 BC. We know that his son, King Solomon, took over. Remember that he's the one that built the first temple, right? When you read in the Old Testament about the Ark of the Covenant, remember when it was captured by the Philistines? And it was taken to Kiryat Yearim, and that's today called Abu Ghosh. Tomorrow we're going to that area. So the Ark of the Covenant stayed there for almost 20 years until David brought the property from Aruna, which I'm going to talk about soon. And that's where he built an altar. He went down to Kiryat Yearim, bringing the Ark of the Covenant, and he didn't build the temple. It was his son that built the first temple. Who destroyed the first temple? Nebuchadnezzar. 586, the temple was destroyed, right? So about 65 years later, we know that Nehemiah is the one that built the second temple. So Herod never built temples, right? And so Herod the Great reigned between 37 and 4 BC, and we know that that's the Roman period. You've heard of Pompey? Pompey came here in 63 BC, and he's the one that built what's called the 10 Decapolis cities. 9 of them are in Jordan, and there's one in Israel. Today it's called Beit Sha'an. At that time it's called Scythopolis. And so that's in the Syrian-African rift, which is in the Jordan. So we know that the Romans came here in 63 BC. Now why we concentrate about the first century? Because it's Jesus' time. So here's where I want you to memorize. There's 3 periods. When I tell you first century, you tell me it's Roman. When I tell you when it's Roman, you tell me first century. Got that?
Got it.
We know that the second temple was destroyed when?
70.
67 it began. It ended up by the year 70, right? 70, Titus destroyed the temple. And now when we walk down, I'm going to show you when Titus destroyed the temple, the stones that you're going to see. Look at the big window, right? You go down, you see that big stone sticking out? Yeah. That's called Robinson's Arch. Somebody asked me about it. It was named after a famous American traveler. So that's Robinson's Arch. That is the original, that's real, that's from the Roman period. That's what Herod the Great built. That's what you touched now. Remember we were at the Western Wall? So this is the Western Wall. But why the Jews chose to pray behind that thing? Because that's the closest point to the Holy of Holies. Which next, when we go through Davidson's center, you'll understand where was the Holy of Holies. So, the temple was destroyed in what year? 70, right? We know that Hadrian crushed the second Jewish revolt in 135 AD, and we spoke about that. So that's when he names the country Philistia after the Philistines. And so that's when the Jews were pushed out from Jerusalem. Same thing for the Judeo-Christians. Remember, there was no such word as Christian at that time. And that lasted until Queen Helena. You've heard of Queen Helena, right? Mm-hmm. She had a son. What's his name? Constantine moves the capital from Rome to what's called today Turkey. It's Constantinople. And so that's what we call the Byzantine. Constantine sends his mama over here. Queen Helena comes to the Holy Land and she starts to build churches. And that's what you've been visiting. Yesterday we went to the Holy Sepulchre. We know that the first church was built by Queen Helena. We know on Mount of Olives there was a church for the Ascension. We know that the birthplace was built by her in 326. So she's the one that started to build churches over sites where Christians commemorated something. So you can imagine in the 4th, 5th century of how many churches were built here. And the simplest answer for anybody who asks me, how do we know that that is the site? And my answer would be, why did the Byzantine build a church there? When we went to the Garden of Gethsemane, it's a church built over ruins that goes back from the 1st century. And so this period we call the Byzantine period. And that's in the 4th century, 5th century. So Byzantine is what century?
4 and 5.
Persians come. 614. The Persians destroyed all the churches that were built by the Byzantine, which was built in the 4th, 5th century, over ruins of 1st century, which is Roman. So you got that? 1st century is Roman. Then we have the Byzantine, which is 4th and 5th. Persians came in. All the churches got destroyed except the one in the Bethlehem, and I told you why. They found that there was a mosaic floor, a mosaic picture with magi's dressed in Persian clothes. So they did not destroy it. That was the only church that was not destroyed. We know that Islam comes in now. Remember, 570 Muhammad was born, 632 he died, and the third holy site for Muslims is this mountain right above. And from there Muhammad flew. Remember what Ali said, that Prophet Muhammad flew on a burak. It's a horse that had wings. He tied his horse at the western wall. He went to the rock. From that rock he meets the prophets. He ascended to heaven. Came back on that same night, flew back to Mecca. And that's why they call it the night journey. And that's why we have a mosque up there. This makes it the third holy site for Muslims after Mecca and Medina, the birth and the burial place of Prophet Muhammad. So if churches were destroyed here and we have a new religion, so instead of churches you find mosques, right? And so new religion, Islam. During David's time it's Judaism. During Byzantine time it was Christianity, right? Now it's Muslim period. And we know that the Muslims built many mosques. And we know that there was, during the Umayyad period, there were 2 palaces here. So those ruins, when we walk, after I show you the center, I'm going to tell you that this is an Umayyad palace that goes from the 8th century, right? Now we know that the Crusaders came here in 1099. So the Crusaders destroyed the mosques and they built churches. Where would you think that the Crusader would build the church? Over the ruins of the Byzantine church, which was destroyed by the Persians. That's where they built another church on top of it. Salah ad-Din comes in 1187. Salah ad-Din destroyed the churches and he built mosques. Right? And then new churches are built during the Ottoman or during the British Mandate. But you see how it builds up? So if I tell you Crusader, it's 11th and 12th. Byzantine is what?
4, 5.
And then Roman?
1.
You got that. So Jesus' time is 1st, Byzantine is 4th, 5th. Then you got the Crusaders, then we have the Umayyad, then you have the Ottomans, and then you have so on and so on. See how it builds up? For example, when we went to the Garden of Gethsemane, that was a modern church built by Antonio Barluzzi, remember? Over ruins of Crusader, which is from the 11th, 12th century. Over ruins of Byzantine, which was 4th, 5th. Over the 1st century, because Jesus prayed at that rock. And that's how it is every place you go. You got that? So now, if I tell you that this is Roman, this is 1st century. But if you go further down, it goes back to King David's time. Remember? Jebusites, Canaanites. So when I take you behind that wall, I'm going to start by showing you the Byzantine level, which is 4th, 5th century. And so as we go down. Now, we know that during the 4th, 5th century, there was a church built here. Why? Because remember when you read in Matthew with the temptation, when the tempter or the devil took Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple, right? The pinnacle is the place where they used to blow the shofar.
Bar mitzvah class.
Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Torah.
So what I'm looking at here at this level is a 1st century road.
One of the questions is there a way that Greek wanted to build the 3rd temple? There is a history for the temple, and they believe that the Messiah will come when the 3rd temple is built. So they're already raising money to build the 3rd temple. Let's come this way. To build the 3rd temple, there's no God but God Himself, and His messenger is Muhammad. So that's the first pillar of Islam. The second one is prayer. Prayer, they should pray 5 times a day. You heard them at 5 in the morning, you heard them at 11:30, then like 3:30, then 5:30, and then 8:30. So 5 times a day they have to pray. And before prayer, they have to do what's called the wudu. Wudu, it's washing. Remember, for Jews, what did you call it? A mikveh, for ritual bath. For us as Christians, what do you call it? It's baptism. For them, they call it wudu. So they have to wash their face, they have to wash their hands, they have to wash their mouth, the feet before they say the prayers. So this is the second one, right? And that's the third one is the Hajj, H-A-J. Every Muslim should contribute a pilgrimage to Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. And that's for them, it's a very important pilgrimage. It's like a Christian coming here and visiting the holy sites, or for going to the holy sepulchre. The fourth one, it's the month of fasting. That's the month when Muhammad, or part of the book that's called the Quran, he received during that month. Not the whole book, but parts of it. And so the Muslims fast for 30 days, from sunrise until sundown. No drinking, no eating. And that's the month of Ramadan. And that month of Ramadan, or the fasting, changes because they use what's called the lunar calendar, right? It's just go follow with the moon. And so it changes about 2 weeks every year. The fifth one is called Zakat, Z-A-K-A-T, and that is the alms where you give some percentage of your salary to the needy people. So that's the 5 pillars of Islam. They chose Friday. Friday is their holy day. Remember, the Christians took Sunday and the Jews took Saturday. So they had to choose between those. So it was either Friday or Monday. So they took Friday. So Friday is their official holiday. And that's where they have the longest prayer. That's when the imam is the one that would give a sermon. And every mosque would have a mihrab, and they have also a minbar, which is the pulpit for you. You know, when the priests go up and give a sermon, same thing for the Muslims. So that's a little bit about Islam. And that is the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
And yeah, I read in my book where the Dome of the Rock was like that, and then King Hussein of Jordan paid to make it gold.
Yeah, he gilded it, yeah. It was leaking. And so when they wanted to rebuild, they said, oh, let's make it shiny. But that's how
What year was that? Did they make it shiny?
King Hussein city, this is King David's city. And remember when you read in the Old Testament about David smuggling his soldiers through the tzinor, through the shaft, and he conquered the city. So they found the shaft, so it's down at the Gihon spring.
Cool.
You heard of King Hezekiah? In the 7th century, King Hezekiah ordered his men to dig a channel under the city, which is down. And so imagine that the spring, that is one of the stars over there, okay? And the spring is outside the city. So if you were the army, the biggest thing, or the worst thing, is that you can't get to the water. So Hezekiah orders to dig a channel. So picture where the car is, that you have a channel that winds under the buses, and it ends to where the city is. And so he built a pool inside. But this is all you have to move down. Are you with me? So the Gihon spring is down.
This level is the King David level.
And so there's the triple arch. So we're going to go that way. See, there's a triple arch.
Yep.
And there's a double gate. Believe where this arch is. So there's the triple arch gate and the double arch. Today there's a mosque right inside. We call it the Marwani Mosque. But some mikvahs have been found right down. From the Roman time was right in front of us, including this one on my right. So it was double the size of what the city is today. Now, where was Jesus arrested? Where do you think the Garden of Gethsemane is?
On the other side.
It's on the other side. See where the buses are?
Right.
If you move it down from the buses, that's where the Garden of Gethsemane, remember? So that's where Judas kissed Jesus, remember? And from there, they arrested Jesus, taking him to who?
Pilate.
Caiaphas. Remember? Took him to Caiaphas first. So Caiaphas used to wear that blue dome church. Can you see it? Yeah. That's where there's a dungeon there. And it's believed they put Jesus one night in that dungeon until the Sanhedrin would have met. Then they sent him to Pontius Pilate. And that's what we're doing tomorrow morning. So from here, they took Jesus to Antonius' fortress. If we were able to go on the Temple Mount, I'm going to show you at the southern, on the northern part of it, that there is a minaret today. But that's the foundation of what's called Antonius' fortress. And that's where Jesus' trial took place. And that's why tomorrow when we tell you that we are outside Antonius' fortress, Jesus receives the cross and he makes his way to Calvary, and that's what we're doing tomorrow morning.
It's Friday night. It's Friday night for us. So it's Friday. Shabbat. There's going to be another day. That's what we're going to do. So as we saw in the movie, there's the bullet holes, the Zion Gate. That's cool. Good thing we saw the movie last night. One of the many traditions here is this is the upper room, but many churches claim this.
I wanted to, no. It was after the fall, but things were probably worse than during communism because there were no laws. Our guide paid for everything. Oh, you can't go there? Okay, well here's whatever. I mean, it was kind of scary. Jeez. You know, there's no law. But I wasn't prepared for how beautiful.
He's a busy
And
guy.
the Knesset, or the parliament, which has 120 members, there's about 8 or 9 members are Arab Israelis. Arab Israelis, remember? Nicopolis, it's mentioned in the map where we are right now. And this is it, Nicopolis. And it's believed this is the real Emmaus because there is ruins that goes back to the 4th, 5th century, and that's what they're trying to show you. For example, this is the Dead Sea, and here's the Jordan River, and I love this part. The fish is swimming this way, but they will come near the Dead Sea, they're going the other way. All right.
Imaginatively or spiritually on his walk to the cross. And if we had done things in order and started up in the Galilee, at his birthplace, and then in the areas where he did most of his adult ministry, coming up to Jerusalem would have been a kind of culmination, and then his crucifixion and resurrection.